Chapter 2 of When Woman Proposes by Anne Warner. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Jen Broda. The entrance which the hero makes. After dinner that night, Natalie came over by her friend's chair, knelt there, and laid her cheek against the other's knee. Mrs. Dupre put her hand caressingly upon the waves of soft brown hair that yielded so sweetly to the restraint of jeweled pin and bandeau, and for some little while neither spoke. There was a fire of sea-wood burning before them, and the prisms of its metallic glow threw strange hues over the two women and their gowns. It was as if some magic imprisoned in the ether of our encasing spiritual world were striving to leap free and impart its secret through the medium of colors, half material and half hitherto unknown. Shades of the pearl mingled with those that pass with the passing of a human's breath across polished steel, and then both faded, and the purple that presages cyclonic storms reigned for a minute until suddenly tipped with all the shooting splendors of the aurora borealis on a zero night. Mrs. Dupre, looking downward at the face against her knee, could not distinguish the fire's play from the play of that other fire which Natalie had that day declared to be new-lighted. The latter was unwontedly quiet, but in the end she spoke first of the two. She ceased to lean as she did so, raising herself instead to a position of unsupported individuality and clasping her hands about her knees. "Catherine," she said, "he has already begun to make me over. He is making me see my faults and want to cure them as quickly as I can. He looked very, very conventional. That means that he will not like anything unconventional in me. I must begin to be conventional at once. I must be conventional about meeting him." She paused and looked earnestly and inquiringly at her friend. Mrs. Dupre smiled a little, a very little. "If he does not like unconventionality, my dear," she began, and then stopped. "You mean that if he does not like unconventionality, he will not like me? You are very unconventional, Natalie, dear. But I am not going to stay so. Hereafter, I shall be conventional. Wait and see. I'm going to be everything that will please him, and if that will please him, I shall surely be that also." Mrs. Dupre sat silent. She felt tonight that such a course was more than ever before the wisest for her to pursue. Up to 5 hours previous, Natalie had been a thing apart, one who dwelt in a world so utterly unlike the world of others that ordinary everyday thoughts frequently became as shapeless shadows in her mental neighborhood. Now, a new phase had come into being, and in the face of her readiness to make herself completely over to suit her standards of an utter stranger, the suggestion that the stranger might be unworthy or lacking in any degree of reciprocal interest in herself seemed curiously out of place, somewhat like applying a letter scale to heaven's promises. Mrs. Dupre felt that it was all absurd, but felt not the less helpless to combat the situation. She was used to struggling amid the nets and toils spread by her young friend's impulses, but she had never before been caught in the bear trap of a love affair. She felt hopelessly incapable, so she remained silent. "Do you know, Catherine, we really know very little about him," Natalie said at last. "I wish that you had asked Mrs. Galbraith a great many more questions." Mrs. Dupre nodded slightly. "Where is he stationed, and where is he staying while he is here? Things like that." "Yes, I wish that I had," said the friend. "I don't like the idea of going there to tea on Thursday and having Mrs. Galbraith introduce us. I don't like to think that I shall have to remember all my life that Mrs. Galbraith introduced us. I've never been particularly fond of Mrs. Galbraith. She isn't anyone that I would dream of ever asking to a small informal wedding. You know that as well as I do." Mrs. Dupre felt that whatever else she might have felt disinclined to discuss, she certainly had no views to offer as to Mrs. Galbraith's presence at the wedding of Natalie and Captain Mowbray. But Natalie had views on the subject. "You know that if she introduced us, she would expect to be asked. You know that as well as I do. And she would cry because she would be so sorry that it was not Cuthbert. You know she is always hoping that I will marry him some day. If we go there to tea Thursday, he will be there too, of course, and that won't be agreeable. No, I shall not go there to tea on Thursday. Don't say another word about it. I've quite decided. There was a pause. But how am I going to meet him? There was a long pause after that. I must meet him, you know, and I don't want to wait too long either. There was a still longer pause after that. If I wrote a note, said Natalie very slowly, and addressed it to Captain Francis Mowbray in care of the War Department, and told him frankly that I wanted to meet him and that I wanted him to come here and be met, then he would come and I could ask him where he was stationed, and it would all be quite simple. But that would be unconventional, I suppose. She looked at Mrs. Dupre as she spoke. I'm afraid that it would be unconventional, admitted Mrs. Dupre. Yes, I felt that, said Natalie, and sighed lightly. Then she rose from the floor and moved around behind a large low-backed chair and rested her crossed wrists upon its carving. Her eyes looked deeply and earnestly into the fire whose shafts of blaze leapt, quick to answer their appeal. I do not worry at all, she said after a little. There is really nothing to worry about, because of course, if I am going to marry him, and I am going to marry him, he will have to meet me soon, some way. But I certainly wish that it wasn't quite so puzzling to see how it was to be brought about. Mrs. Dupre wondered whether or not to suggest leaving all to fate. After a little, she decided to say it, and said it. Natalie looked at her in startled surprise. Why, then I might not meet him at all, she said. There was an undercurrent of aggrieved amazement that her friend should have entertained such an idea. Goodness me, why, he didn't even see me. When a man hasn't even seen you, you can't expect fate to do anything. Mrs. Dupre resumed her usual tactics at once. Natalie continued to knit her brows and contemplate the fire. Marriages are something that can't be left to fate, she continued presently. Fate makes a worse mess of them even than you do yourself. I've been married once by fate. This time I want to try the law of election, or the law of evolution, or whatever it is that lets you choose the man to suit yourself. I've chosen to suit myself. I've chosen this man. Now I want to meet him so I can get him and marry him. Mrs. Dupre stayed silent and also stayed sober. I'm going to bed now and think hard. I feel as if I were going to grow a great deal tonight. The older friend stretched out her hand. The younger came to her side and took it, dropping upon her knees again and pillowing her cheek against its white softness. Seeing him has filled me full of new longings, Catherine. It is as if I were putting out little shoots of wanting to be better in every direction. He looked so good standing there, as though he had conquered himself and other things, as if only great ideas and impulses counted in his world. It wasn't just his face and figure that I liked. It was that he showed that he must be splendid all through. A man like that could not be petty or mean. It wouldn't be possible. A man that looks like that and stands like that, lives like that too. She paused, and Mrs. Dupre, looking straight into the sea glow, saw each flame jet through the drift of misty tears, and could not help it, and did not desire to help it. It's going to make me all over, Natalie went on. I've changed ever so much just since this afternoon. But the strangest thing is that now that it has come, I feel as if I had been getting ready for it, without knowing for what, for quite a while. I've been feeling myself changing and growing different. Now, I really am different. I shall cease to do foolish things that get me talked about. I shall cease to be foolish in any way. I shall become just the kind of a woman that he admires. I am going to learn to be as grand for a woman as he is for a man. I am going to be worthy of him. Wait, and you shall see. Mrs. Dupre felt that she must speak now. She had never seen her young friend like this, or anything at all like this before. She opened her lips, and then, Just before her first word shaped itself, a slight stir sounded in the hall outside. "Ah, company!" exclaimed Natalie, and sprang to her feet at once. But it was only the butler. "I beg your pardon, madam," he said, "but there's a gentleman fallen and hurt himself outside. They want to know if they may bring him in while they get a doctor and send for the ambulance." "Someone hurt?" Natalie's lips paled as she moved quickly across the room. "Why, of course, Perkins. Tell them to bring him right in here on the big couch. How is he hurt? Is he badly hurt? Was it his own motor? Or did someone else hit him?" By the time that the last questions were being put, they had reached the large, dimly lit hall, the front door of which was standing open, while an indistinguishable outline of figures seemed to be arrested on the steps outside. The butler hastily turned on more lights, and going forward said, "Mrs. Arundel says to bring the gentleman in, if you please." Then as he moved back to make room for those who were carrying the hurt man, he said in answer to his mistress, "No, it wasn't a motor accident, madam. It looks like he did not see the curb and caught his foot and fell against the big tree guard." Natalie stood a little back, just by the newel post at the foot of the staircase. There were 3 men bearing the disabled man, and they followed the butler into the library. As they entered its doorway, Mrs. Dupre, who had advanced into the middle of the room, gave a low cry. As she did so, she looked quickly to where Natalie's figure appeared between the portieres. "Do you see?" she gasped. Natalie raised her hand quickly. "Don't say anything, Catherine," she said in low but distinct tones. "It is just right. It is fate, after all. I'll never say anything against her again." Still speaking, she moved towards the divan upon which they had laid Mowbray at full length, and looked straight down upon him. His hair was all wet and shone with a ghastly bronze reflection, and upon his coat collar and his white shirt bosom were crimson stains. One of the men began to try to remove the overcoat and loosen the collar and tie, and with his first effort, a great red spot began to spread upon the pillow. "No, no!" Natalie exclaimed. "Don't do that. Don't touch him until a doctor says what to do. One of you please go just to the corner. A surgeon lives there. Ask him to come as quickly as possible to number 18. She laid her fingers softly on the wet hair as she spoke, and shuddered slightly as she did so. "Look, Catherine," she said, "he is terribly hurt. He will be ill a long, long time. Hurry upstairs and have Elna build a fire in the big guest room, and have the bed open to air. They will want to carry him up there just as soon as his head has been dressed." Mrs. Dupre stood as if turned to stone. Natalie stared fixedly at her own reddened fingertips for a score of seconds, and then lifting her head with a little start, saw that her friend had not moved. "Catherine," she cried, "haven't you gone?" Their eyes met, and there was that in the younger woman's that battled fiercely and bore down all opposition before it. Mrs. Dupre turned and walked out of the room. Some hours later, on the same evening, Natalie came into her friend's room. She had on her night-robe, and over its hand-embroidered daintiness there floated Sistine Madonna-like a long voluminous mantle of blue. Mrs. Dupre was sitting in a low chair beside the open fire. In her hand she held a book, but she was not reading. Her face was full of veiled trouble. Natalie crossed and stood before her. "I have just seen the nurse," she said. "He is asleep. He is standing it all very well. The doctor will stay all night, and the other nurse will come at 6 o'clock in the morning. The only danger will be from brain fever." She paused for a second or two, and her empty hands caught into a fold of the blue gown and held it hard. "It is very likely that he will have brain fever. It is very likely that he will be ill. Frightfully ill. The doctor did not say so, but I could see his thoughts as clearly as if he had screamed them at me. But no matter how ill he is, he will live. Do you hear, Catherine? He will live. They did not bring him to my house tonight to die, and if all the doctors in the city say that he must die, it is not going to frighten me one bit." Mrs. Dupre lifted her sadly disturbed eyes up to the face above. The face above was strangely, earnestly aglow. "It is fortunate that you were here tonight, Catherine, Fortunate for my new conventional resolves, you know. For I should have kept him anyway. If I had been alone, I should have kept him. Nothing would have mattered to me. If there had been no one to bring him in, I should have found strength to raise him up and carry him myself. If there had been no doctors, I should have found the knowledge to have bound up his head properly. If there had been no nurses, I should have nursed him here all alone by myself and have saved his life in the end. I know that I should have been able. I am quite sure. Mrs. Dupre could only gaze upon the new unwanted exultation in the face she knew so well. He is mine now, Catherine. From now on, he is mine. All mine. Mine alone. He does not know it. He does not know me. But it is so. I never guessed that all this was in me, but I know now. I feel as if I knew everything tonight, and that where he is concerned, nothing in the whole world can stand against me. Not death, not life, nothing, nothing. Something like a groan burst from Mrs. Dupre's lips. Oh, Natalie, Natalie. It was the voice of affectionate reason crying out to unreasoning love. The younger woman suddenly stooped and enfolded her friend in her arms and in the folds of her blue mantle. Catherine, wait. Only wait. Then the folds of the mantle that was dyed the color of hope fell apart, and Mrs. Dupre, looking upward again, saw in the eyes above her the light that forever tramples down all and every reason by right of its own superior truth. End of chapter 2.